Hey, true crime fanatics, this is Claire.
And I'm Andy.
You're tuned in to the Homicide Hobbies podcast, which is a podcast for people who love to hear about the horrendous crimes that people commit. Enjoy. So what do you have for us today?
Our win is a way back when kind of case. We're going to go back to
last year.
We're going to go back to 1890s in New York.
Your youth.
Your youth?
That would make you even older. Are you doing the math?
No, I was just blinking.
Oh.
Anyway, Martha Gerritsen was born September 18th, 1849. She grew up in New Jersey, but would eventually move to New York. Martha was a talented dressmaker. When Martha was just 23, she suffered a major head injury when a sleigh hit her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that seems like it hurt.
Like they were snow the things letting?
So I feel like it was probably like I couldn't find super information. Everybody just calls it a sleigh. So I don't know if it was a kid sledding.
Or Santa.
Or if it was like a horse-drawn sleigh thing, because you know how the snow is up in New York. Don't know. She got hit and had a major injury. Martha never fully recovered from the injury.
Ooh.
While physically Martha recuperated, her brother would say the head injury left Martha mentally unstable. But that's also coming from her brother, and I feel like that is a biased opinion of...
I was going to say... Technically, I feel like our brother would say that you haven't fully recovered.
Or you, asshole. He talks to me more than you, so nanny boo-boo.
It's because he's worried for your head injuries. You haven't fully recovered.
What head injury?
See, you don't even remember.
Martha would go on to get married to a man named Wesley Savicle.
Whoa, sounds like he needs a treatment for that.
Together, they would have a son named Ross. Happiness would continue to elude Martha because her husband Wesley would walk out on her and their son when their son was just 3 years old. And then to make matters worse, it wasn't like they could try to have any sort of reconciliation because Wesley died.
Oh.
I don't know how.
How soon after he left?
I don't know. It doesn't matter. He walked out. He ended up dead. Back in the day, it was unacceptable to be a single mother. And Martha felt forced to give her son Ross up for adoption. So Martha gave Ross to a family that she knew was grieving the loss of their own son. And that couple happily took Ross into their home and changed his name to William.
Ew.
That seems really sad. I realize he's 3, but that sucks. Daddy left, and then you got a new mommy and daddy and a new house. But it turns out it would be beneficial for this kid. Eventually, in 1893, Martha found a job working as a housekeeper for a widower named William Place in Brooklyn. Now, William and his deceased wife had a daughter that they named Ida. Ida, at this point, is around 11, maybe 12. Just like the movies that we frequently reference, I'm sure you can guess what happens next. Martha catches the eye of that single father, William, and he soon decides that Ida needs a new mommy. And who better than that single housekeeper, Martha?
She already knows where things are in the kitchen.
So William and Martha married extremely quickly. They were married within the same year that she began working for William.
Oh.
And kind of like you just said, where she already knows where the things are in the kitchen, I literally have it written in here that I know I sound cynical, but I don't think William even loved her.
It was a marriage of convenience.
It sure was. He realized he could marry her, and then she'd do all the chores for free.
And he wouldn't need a housekeeper.
Exactly.
Or a babysitter.
Right.
Was she doing both?
She was. I think it was more or less she was trying to entice him, so she tried to bond with the 11-year-old Ida so that William would be like, oh, she's great with Ida. She'd make a good mommy. And we know how the menfolk get all squirrely, especially back in the day with a little girl coming of age, the whole period thing, all that. And he's like, oh.
What the hell were the noises?
Funny, because I pictured your husband and mine with the... Anyway, so...
Yeah, well, I just pictured you trying to, like, dodge basketballs or something at your face hole. Like, oh, what's with the noises?
Anyway, so rushing into marriage rarely ends well for some.
Sorry.
Shut up, Claire. It wasn't a happy marriage for William and Martha. After Martha got that ring, she became the evil stepmother that we see in nearly every Disney movie. She became jealous of the love William had for his now 12-year-old daughter, Ida. I'm going to suggest that she needed some serious therapy because some of her issues with Ida probably stem more from her husband, not her, like the first husband, not loving her or their son Ross enough to stick around. And now here you've got William, who absolutely adores his daughter and would do anything for her, including marry the psycho housekeeper. But soon Martha's jealousy turned into hatred for Ida, and the older and more beautiful Ida became, the more seething hatred Martha had for her stepdaughter. Now we're going to fast forward 5 years through their unhappy marriage. Their lives are pretty normal, minus the irrational hatred Martha has for the child that she's been raising. Oh, and William had to call the police at least once on Martha because she kept threatening to kill Ida.
Oh.
Yeah. In the morning on February 7th, 1898, William and Martha got into a heated battle. It became a household divided. It was William and the now 17-year-old Ida versus Martha. William left for work as he always did, only this time he left absolutely furious with his wife. And Ida, who's now 17 and sick of her stepmother's shit, when Martha's anger was turned solely at her, Ida reacted to the verbal abuse by slamming her bedroom door shut in Martha's face. Martha, who was already blind with rage, grew even more livid by the second. Martha went into William's study and retrieved a container from his desk. She returned to Ida's room with this container and threw this liquid into her face. Now, William, like many people, had several hobbies. One of his hobbies? Amateur photography.
Oh.
Back in the day, the process of developing photos involved the use of acid. That acid is what Martha threw in her stepdaughter's face.
That was uncalled
Vicious?
for.
17-year-old Ida began shrieking in pain while unsuccessfully wiping at her face. Martha's brutal attack on Ida wasn't even finished yet. Acid wasn't enough. Martha went down to the basement and retrieved an axe. She returned to her wailing stepdaughter, raised the axe above her head, and began viciously striking Ida. One of the several blows from the axe left a gaping wound from the top of Ida's head down to her neck, and Ida was now crumpled on the floor, but still breathing. I'm hoping it was more or less one of those things where she's
gone.
Yeah, but basically like the battery's still running, so her body's still attempting to function. Martha, now with the upper hand, began smothering Ida with her bedding. Martha eventually left the lifeless body of Ida under a heap of pillows and blankets.
'Cause that'll fix it.
Well, she then sat patiently, like a psycho, for the remainder of the day, awaiting the arrival of William from work with the bloodied axe across her lap.
Uh-oh.
Like, she just sat there all day. And when William came home, he was met with that axe being swung at his head. Martha struck William at least once in the head with the axe, and in spite of a severely fractured skull, William managed to escape the house and stumbled out into the street bloodied and screaming for help. Knowing her time was numbered, Martha ran into the kitchen in an attempt to commit suicide by turning on the gas.
She did not, because she waited for him.
Well, after she attacked him, knowing that he escaped, she's now going to try to kill herself. I think it was a murder-suicide attempt. But she turns on the gas, not to set the house on fire, but to huff the fumes.
She put her head in the oven.
Pretty much. And her plan nearly worked. As police entered the home, they found Martha unconscious, and she was revived, taken to the hospital, where she recovered fully from her cowardly suicide attempt. Needless to say, police would arrest Martha for the assault on William, but William is still unaware of the unfortunate fate his beloved daughter had suffered.
Real awful way to go.
So awful. The police entered the Place home, which, by the way, when I read that, I hate that their last name is Place because it kept throwing me off, but the police entered their home in search of the teenage girl. Upstairs, they discovered the dead body of 17-year-old Ida. She was lying on her bed. Her mouth was bleeding and her eyes disfigured from having the acid thrown in them. Then Martha was arrested for the murder of Ida. William does survive the attack. And by the way, once Martha is arrested, She starts claiming she's innocent and that it was an intruder that murdered Ida
And threw her head in the oven?
And an intruder that attacked William, even though he saw his wife. Yeah, she's
like, that's real funny because that intruder looked an awful lot like you.
Right? And then once Martha's trial began, it was a shitstorm in the media because it was nearly unheard of for a woman to be this violent. It was just not a thing at that point. And Martha's appearance was described as a woman who looked very stoic, as if she spent her entire life fretting and worrying. Another writer described her face as she's rather tall and spare, with a pale, sharp face. Her nose is long and pointed, her chin sharp and prominent, her lips thin, and her forehead retreating. There's something about her face that reminds one of a rat's.
Oh my God!
And the bright but changeless eyes somehow strengthen the impression of said rat.
You know what? This is an example of the pen is mightier than the sword.
Yeah, that was a vicious description of her.
And he's only talking that shit because she's axeless.
Pretty much. During Martha's murder trial, she never changed the expression on her face except for when William was testifying. And only then did she part her lips in a thin grin at him while staring at her husband as he testified against her.
How the hell would you smile?
I don't know. I guess as he's sobbing about how his daughter was killed.
She thinks it's funny. That's disgusting.
She's sitting there smirking. It's so gross. It was also determined Ida's cause of death wasn't the acid that disfigured her, nor was it the many blows with the axe, but asphyxiation from Martha pressing a pillow over her mutilated face.
That's even worse.
That's so sad. That's why I said I hope that the axe rendered her unconscious and pain-free, and it was just her body attempting to go into automatic mode.
Yeah. Had a technicality. She was already out.
Yeah. Martha was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death by electric chair. She would be remanded to the Sing Sing prison in New York, where she would sit waiting to be the first woman to be put to death by electrocution. Martha's attorney reached out to the new governor of New York, Theodore Roosevelt, in hopes of having her sentence commuted, but Roosevelt refused and said, "My sympathies in criminal cases are for the wronged and not for the wrongdoer." Aside from being the stepmother from hell, Martha's other claim to fame, she was going to be the first woman to be put to death by the electric chair. In fact...
Not something I'd want to be marking off.
No, me either. And in fact, the electric chair was still a relatively new method to put people on death row to death. Prior to Martha, it had only been utilized 11 times, all on men. The first feller who died by the electric chair, it was 9 years prior on August 6th, 1890. To say his execution didn't go well would be a massive understatement. He had to be electrocuted twice before he was dead.
I don't feel bad for him. He chose his poison. But I can say that I wouldn't want to be practiced on. I feel like that rope there looks mighty fine to me.
I don't know if I'd want to strangle to death.
You'd only have to do it the once.
That's true. That feller's name was William Kimmler, if you're curious.
I wasn't.
Oh, okay then. Well, Martha made herself, because remember, she's a dressmaker. They gave her the material, and she made herself a long black dress for her execution.
Did they give her rat print?
I think she left out. Maybe she made herself a collar out of her fellow rats.
That is so fucked up to write. I still can't shake it. Something about her face makes you think of a rat.
It's a vicious way to describe somebody. I realize she's not a nice person, but still.
She doesn't need a kindness.
Here, I'm going to send you a picture of her, because she doesn't look like a rat. She definitely looks...
Maybe she smelled like one.
Well, he didn't describe her smell.
You don't know.
He described her face. I sent you a picture. I texted it to you.
I didn't get it. Who'd you send it to?
I sent it to you.
Not true. It's Claire.
Aren't you a smartass today?
I don't see anything. I got it. I'm not...
They gave her a harsh description.
I'm not feeling ratty.
No. She just looks like a plain Jane, in my opinion. She looks like an older...
Or a possum or a turtle.
I could see the turtle because of the mouth.
She's got possum eyes.
Her nose isn't anything crazy. She has a normal, plain Jane face that looks a little aged.
She looks like a younger Miss Cuthbert.
I was thinking Hetty.
No. If anybody's watched Avonlea or Anne of Green Gables.
She looks like if Marilla Cuthbert and Hetty had a child. She could be a sister of them.
No.
Yeah. That's not even the original actress.
I didn't. Did you hear any Miss me say the original? Fine. Anne with an E, Marilla Cuthbert. Doesn't that look like her though?
No.
What?
I think it looks like she could be related to the two ladies we both named. But anyway, back to this piece of garbage. She made her long black dress, and on March 20th, 1899, Martha buttoned herself into her death dress as she was escorted into the execution chamber. The executioner had to pin Martha's long, thick head.
Her head?
So you got me distracted, and when I read Martha, I thought I was reading the wrong name because I was thinking of Martha Cuthbert.
It's Marilla.
But it doesn't matter. My brain went Martha Cuthbert, and I was like, wait a minute.
Pin her head somewhere. I mean, I haven't attended one of those executions, but it doesn't seem like they need to do any pinning first.
So the executioner had to pin Martha's long, thick, graying hairs back so the electrodes could be attached to her forehead.
Otherwise, we're going to have to do this twice.
They tightened the straps around her waist. They struggled to attach the leg electrodes while not overtly exposing Martha's modesty. Martha's long skirt had to be sliced so they could place the electrodes on her ankles without exposing her ankle skin.
Right.
They covered Martha's face with a mask.
Let us not show too much flesh before we kill her.
Right.
Nobody wants to see those rat ankles. That's what happened there.
The executioner then sent 1,760 volts surging through Martha's body.
That's it?
And after about 4 seconds had elapsed, a further 200 volts were given.
Can we just start out at the max?
Then followed by a third wave of electricity.
This is not the time to try to conserve electricity.
This series of power bringing death to Martha Garretson Place. Martha's last words before the switch was thrown, God help me. Martha Place was executed at the age of 49, and she was buried at her family's cemetery plot in New Jersey without any religious observations. But that is Martha Place. I think it's crazy that they had to... I don't know how they do the electric chair. I know that there's problems with it, but I didn't realize that they sent multiple... It's like they could only get the 1,700 volts, and then they had to like recharge, and then when they got it to 200, they're like, heck with it, just send it to her.
Maybe it was a case of they're like, maybe we don't need all the power because she's a woman, she's smaller, look at her ankles.
I thought it was awfully sad that William's only child was murdered, and she was murdered in a brutal way.
Yeah, it was definitely fucked up. And she wasn't even sorry.
No, she's not sorry. She freaking smiled. So cracking a grin while he testifies, that seems awfully harsh.
Hey, you know how back in the day you could tip your executioner? Maybe somebody paid for it to be like, only give her part of the juice.
Maybe.
You don't know.
I don't. I said maybe.
That's what I said. You don't know.
That's why I said maybe. It was real awfully sad when I was reading about it, though. And then when it's like, that's her claim to fame, is that she's psychotic, got hit by a sleigh, and the first woman to be electrocuted in New York.
Turns out she could have just saved everybody the time and aggravation and just been run over completely.
Told you that was a short one, though.
Well, I kept having to interrupt because you weren't giving me time to throw in my anecdotes.
You throw them in at weird points. I didn't expect some of them.
I would think that going on year 3, that you'd know where that it takes some processing time, especially when you're throwing out some weird shit like rats.
I gave you processing time on that one.
Not with the picture, but that is still fucked up. Like, something about her face makes you think of a rat.
Yeah.
Not that I have sympathies to her at all. She did what she did.
Well, when you see her picture, that description is very harsh. She doesn't look like a rat.
Well, and it makes me think whoever wrote the article needs some glasses.
I do agree that she looked very stoic and as if she spent her entire life fretting and worrying. She does have that look about her.
Of course she would have that look about her. She's facing the electric chair.
That was before all that.
She should have put her head in the oven earlier.
So the picture I sent you was before she did all this.
How do you know?
Not after. Looky here, lady.
You're even tired of your own story. You really need a nap today.
Tired of your nonsense.
That's not true.
No, I know. This was the case that I was struggling with because...
I think you told me about it.
I didn't tell you all about it, but I was struggling with the daughter's age because I was curious what age was Martha when she married William, and what age was his daughter? Was it like she was 5 or 6, and then at 17 she murdered her? Because not saying that at any point murdering your stepchild is appropriate or reasonable, but if they weren't married long and she came into it and she was already like a disrespectful teenager, like you're not my mom kind of shenanigans from the get-go.
By that age, shouldn't she have been married and out of the house anyhow?
We don't know what her prospects were. I was curious as to like, that took some serious digging to see like what year they got married and all of that. So I just thought it was crazy that they were married for 5 years. That's it.
No, you want to know what's crazy is the extensive conversation we had about acid throwing, and you were all, haven't heard of that being in the United States, and then your case is in the fucking United States.
No, ma'am. Go back. First of all, that was a current case, and you said you were talking about the gasoline and acid being thrown at people at the gas stations in the U.S. I have never heard of people being doused with gas or acid unless it was a domestic situation. And you were trying to say that it was like a thing where people were going around getting doused with.
It is.
Prove it.
Fine. Well, you just did 2 cases on them.
This was back in the 1800s. I didn't.
Why are you getting squeaky?
And they're not at a gas station.
So this would be an incident with acid, in case you weren't listening to your own case. And also in the United States.
Right, not at a gas station.
This would be an example of the acid.
You said at the gas station that people were getting doused with gas and acid.
Right.
And I said...
And you also said that you hadn't heard of people doing that in the United States. You've just done 2.
In the 2000s. I still haven't heard of people in the United States walking around with acid.
Well, both cases you did! And that was 2 in the 2000s.
It was gas, it wasn't acid.
No one asked about the beans.
Listen here. I know you don't like to be wrong. It's okay.
That's because I'm
we'll
not.
Just agree to disagree because you're full
right,
of it.
I don't like to be wrong when I'm not wrong.
I've never heard in the 2000s about people going around at gas stations getting doused with acid or gasoline. I don't care if I did a case about a domestic situation. I said, other than that, I have never heard of it before, of the gasoline. And as for the acid, in the 2000s, I have never heard of people going around in the U.S. dousing people with acid. You can't tell me what I have and haven't heard of. What did you just send me?
There's actually even a website on it. Acid attacks statistically by region.
I don't even want to hear you and your stupid statistics.
Apparently, it's way more common in India.
Ugh.
What?
I literally said in that case, it is recorded that I've heard about it in other countries.
Oh, right.
Not
so
in
what's
the
the
US.
squirreliness? I didn't say it doesn't happen in the United States. I'm just saying is all. There's a website devoted to it. And would you take it down a notch?
Don't tell me what to do.
I just did. Where is your husband? Just kidding.
Where's yours? Dave, you need to get your woman under control. Tell her to shut her pie hole when she's
There's only one person here that needs something shoved in their pie hole, and that's not me.
That is too far, lady.
That's
too far.
That's what he said.
And on that note...
Thank you for listening to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Claire.
I'm Andy.
Follow us each week to get your fix of the atrocities that occur in true crime. And don't forget to tell people about us and rate us if you like us. But don't rate us if you didn't. Just change the channel.